Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargeant. Now, let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. So we're talking about toilet training here today on parenting. It's something that I know that we've gone through and we're always go through, whether it's ourselves as child or teaching our own children to toilet train. Apparently there is a huge way of doing it, and there are so many different signs to be ready for it as well. I didn't know that there was a sign to actually be ready for toilet training. I thought it was just something that you just teach them slowly, but I'm really glad that I have Teresa Kmak here to join me and to help me talk about this a little bit more. Also to help me understand what it all means and the fact that there are signs for it. So thank you, Teresa, for coming on and pretty much saving my life at this moment.
Thank you for having me. And feel free, you can call me Teri as well. That's my nickname.
Okay, perfect. Teri, that's amazing. So do you mind telling me a little bit more about how you got into talking about toilet training and potty training and just a little bit more about it?
So I think it really started with the pandemic. Obviously, as you know, the whole world shut down, and I used to do in-home therapy services. And so we had to come up with a way that, how do we alter that and change that? So we moved to permanently virtual visits. I'm currently a certified developmental therapist with the state of Illinois. So what that means is I work with children with a birth to 3 population that have special needs and disabilities. And so I wanted to really kind of expand that practice. And I stumbled upon the Institute of Pediatric Sleep and Parenting. And with that program, they offer pediatric sleep consulting courses, which I did take, and also potty training consulting services. So I think that with the population I currently work with, potty training has always been a subject and a topic that parents consistently talk about, they have concerns with. And so I just wanted to educate more and really expand my field to help better support the families that I work with.
Well, it's amazing that I didn't know there was always ever a toilet training consultant. And it's not a job that you hear about every day. So how did you get into just talking about that itself? Like from where you started off with and you just sort of gone into it?
Well, I found the program about 2 years ago, and I thought that just would be really cool. I tried to support families as best as I could prior to finding out about the program, but I never really did that much research on it. So I feel like learning about this course and taking the courses, it's really helped to expand my horizon and just be more confident in talking to it with families. And especially, I have my own son now. He's 27 months, so that's definitely going to be an area be working on over the next couple months as well. And I think that once I go through that directly with my own family, again, we'll be able to better help families with, okay, this is what my experience was, what can I change to give more information to families.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing, and congratulations on 27 months as well. So before we get started a little bit more about the topic, we'd love to get to know a little bit more about you as well. And we'd like to play this little icebreaker to get us started. So just say the first thing that sort of comes to your mind when you hear these topics.
Okay.
So the first one is your favorite book.
So right now, my favorite book is I've Loved You Since Forever. My son is really into reading, and so I spend a lot of my time reading more books that he's interested in. The last couple of books that I read have either been potty training related or sleep consulting related or parenting related. So that's just kind of, I really enjoy reading books with my son with on his level.
No, like I love that because it's like a relationship between the two of you and it starts off really well. And I remember my parents reading that and reading different books. And I think that relationship is always going to be one of the highlights of growing up as well, because reading is such an important thing between, and it's turned me into a huge reader. I don't know if that's got something to do with it, but it's definitely a starting off point for me.
I agree. Yeah, with our local library, over the summer program, my son filled out a chart with he would mark off every book that he read, and he actually read 1,000 books before he turned the age of 2. So that's something I'm very proud in.
Wow. Okay, that should definitely be awarded Guinness World Record or something, because that's incredible. So the next one is a favorite movie of yours.
I am a sucker for The Green Mile. That movie makes me cry every time. And I think I can relate to the character because the character clearly has a developmental delay or disability. And because I work with that population, my heart goes out to him. And just seeing that the characters in that time frame weren't educated, that there was something else going on with him, it just breaks my heart because I really want to try and advocate for that population. So that movie is always a tearjerker for me.
No, I can definitely relate to that. I love that movie. I think that is something that I watch. My dad introduced me to that, and it's become a great family favorite. It's on like a little playlist of what we do when we're feeling a little emotional and need something like that. So yes, I can definitely attest that that is an amazing movie, and I can definitely see why it's your favorite. The next one is a favorite podcast of yours.
So when I hear podcast, I think of the specific podcast, the Infertile Mafia. Unfortunately, I do have a history of infertility, and so this podcast was definitely a go-to for me during a really tough time in my life. Just being able to relate to other women, just hearing other women's stories, and just making me feel, as though I wasn't alone in that process. So I definitely am very grateful for that podcast.
Well, that's amazing. And it's amazing that there's a podcast out there that allows people to share different journeys and the different situations. So that's definitely amazing. The next one is a famous role model of yours.
So I'm a huge Friends fan, and so I just love Jennifer Aniston. I feel like she's just such a go-getter, and she's just this strong, independent woman, and I feel like she just resembles just really great confidence, and I just feel like I looked up to her growing up watching that show and just seeing her evolution of a character evolve over time. I just feel like she does a lot of great work with the St. Jude's charity and things like that. So I definitely have a high level of respect for Jennifer Aniston.
Well, that's great. Friends is also one of my favorite shows. So yes, I can definitely agree with that. The last one is a course that you have recently completed.
A course that I've recently completed would have been probably with the Institute of Pediatric Sleep and Parenting. Those were 2 years ago that I completed those courses. Currently, I have 5 different certifications. I hold my master's degree. I have a master's of education specializing in early childhood special ed. And with my master's program, I was able to complete a certification as a developmental therapist with the state of Illinois. So I hold that certification. And then with the Institute of Pediatric Sleep and Parenting, I earned the certifications of potty training consultant, newborn sleep consultant, pediatric sleep consultant, and also baby sign language educator.
Wow. That is an amazing journey with a lot of different paths that you've sort of dived into. And yeah, so you're definitely the perfect person to talk to today.
Yeah, it might seem like a lot of different paths, but at the same time, with child development, they all kind of intertwine with each other, which is why I really wanted to complete all the certifications, is because that's all part of child development.
Well, that's perfect. And you are definitely the reason that you were on the show. So to talk about toilet training, and I love to start off with, everyone has a very diverse opinion as to what parenting is defined as. So how would you see the definition of parenting?
Well, I think parenting to me is, well, first of all, I didn't think that I would be able to be a parent for a long time with my infertility history. I always wanted to be a mom growing up. And then when I felt like that was taken away from me, it was very hard. So now that we have our son, parenting to me is just trying to be the best possible version of myself that I can be for him. I definitely want to try to strive to provide him positive examples for him. I want to be there for him emotionally, physically, should he still need me, but also give him opportunities to try and be independent. I want to try and treat him with respect. As as a person. He's still a person. Just because he's my kid doesn't mean he doesn't deserve respect too. And my goal for that is that if he learns being treated with respect at home, he can treat others with respect outside of our home. And I think parenting to me is also, knowing it's okay to set those parent-child boundaries, but know that he's also two, and I'm one of his only friends right now, me and his dad. So I definitely try and have that relationship with him. Yes, I'm your parent, but I also allow myself to be his friend too.
Well, that is an amazing definition, especially knowing that is deeply affecting the relationship between you and your son, and how it sort of revolves around that. And it's incredible. Everyone has a really good definition. Every time I come onto this, everyone's definition of parenting is so different. So this is why I love this show, and this is why I love doing it. What do you think expectant parents need to be aware of in their transition to parenthood?
I think one of the hardest transitions for me was being comfortable setting boundaries with others. I've always been a people pleaser, and it's been hard for me to say no. And I'm so grateful that my son unintentionally gave me the voice that I didn't know I had with setting boundaries. I'm a very research-based parent, and there's certain things I like to do as far as his schedule goes or his sleep schedule goes. I like to have a routine with him, and some people in our lives didn't really agree with it or understand that initially. Some people challenged that and there were some fights over it, but I stayed firm with my boundaries because that was important to me. And I feel like the people that push the hardest against your boundaries are the ones that probably need those boundaries the most. So I think as far as new parents goes, just be confident in how you want to raise your child, and know that not everyone's going to agree with it, and that's okay. But just know that you're doing your best and for what you think your child needs.
No, I love that that way of doing it, because I think boundaries are so important. Whether you're alone or whether you have family around, I think setting those boundaries with each individual person. And I agree for sure. Like, the people that push your boundaries are the ones that need the boundaries the most. So
yeah,
I definitely can agree with that. So talking about toilet training, we love to start off with a definition of what do you define as toilet training?
So toilet training to me is essentially training your child to use the toilet. Sounds self-explanatory, right? And in the States, we actually commonly call it as potty training as well. So in advance, if you hear that term from me, that's what we're used to calling it.
Yeah.
As far as like the process goes, I kind of look at toilet training to have a beginning, middle, and end. So the beginning to me is kind of a slow introduction about potty training, presenting some books to your child, reading some books about potty training during story time, getting a small potty that you put in the bathroom, or getting a potty seat attachment that you put on your main toilet. Those are different things to start introducing the potty training process. Also, getting your child engaged in the potty training routine. Do you want to come with mommy to the bathroom? Okay, my body says I have to pee. My body says I have to go poop. Those are all, to me, the beginning stages of the potty training process. So that usually starts a couple months before. Then the middle part of the potty training process to me is when you actually commit to, okay, no more diapers, no more pull-ups, whatever you're using. And we are fully committing to this new routine and full force potty training. And then the ending, in my opinion, would be that consistency piece, right? So you're being consistent with that routine and you're being consistent with your child about that. So then that helps make the potty training process the most successful.
Okay, well, it's amazing that there are so many different stages, and there are stages to it, especially with the first stage. For me, it's always interesting to know when a child starts, when you start realizing that the child can sort of be influenced a little bit more to use the toilet and the different ways. So how is toilet training connected to parenting?
I think toilet training is connected to parenting because the parent has to be really in tune with their child's overall development. Like you said, really looking for their child's signs of readiness. And the family has to be willing to change with when their child is changing. You know, if their child's showing more signs, then the parent has to say, okay, it's maybe time for us to change our routine to do something different if our child is ready for it. I think the parent has to be in tune with their own body and know that, yes, this might be a frustrating process for you at times, but you really have to be in check with your own regulation, and know your child's signs of what maybe they're feeling a little bit dysregulated. Okay, how can I work back to coming back in touch with where my child is emotionally right now?
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about this. Is there a ideal age for toilet training, or is it sort of just whenever you see the child feel ready?
So I get this question a lot. So I can tell you what the average age in the States is that parents start potty training. Do you want to take a guess, Dina? Is the average age in the United States 27 months, 18 months, or 32 months? What do you think?
I think I'm going to guess 32 months.
So according to Johns Hopkins Medicine, the average age to start toilet training in the United States is actually 27 months. And according to other sources, between 24 and 36 months is the average age. So that doesn't really answer your question, but it's kind of, that's where the average is at. So for me, I prefer to look at child's readiness signs. To me, readiness signs will always be more important than the child's chronological age.
Okay. So, for example, if the child so they can actually be ready before that time. They could be ready at 18 months or, for example, is there a certain way, like, for example, like when you're going through the process, is there first they're going to start crawling, then they start standing, and then they use the bathroom? Or is it sort of just the different stages at that time as well?
Well, I mean, there's always a range when it comes to child's developmental milestones, right? A child might be crawling anywhere between 8 and 10 months. A child can start walking anywhere between 9 and 15 months. So as far as that goes, there's always going to be a range with those developmental signs. I personally don't like the idea of toilet training a child under the age of 2. You gave the example of possibly 18 months. 18 months is usually about the time that the child is just starting to understand, okay, I can start holding holding my bowel movements or start holding my urine. So those cues are just starting to emerge. So I think there's so many other milestones that a child can do before the age of 2. So I don't personally like toilet training under the age of 2. So some readiness signs that you can look for is your child engaged in your potty time routine or your bathroom routine? Can they sit for a few minutes at a time to attend to task? Do they have any language? Are they understanding some simple directions? Can they stay dry for a 2 hour period? Is your child able to pull down their pants? Those are all some signs of readiness that not necessarily a child under the age of 2 has been able to master yet.
Okay. So going into the importance of toilet training, why is it important that children be toilet trained in the process?
I think it's important because it helps promote a child's sense of independence, and it also really helps with their body awareness. So just teaching the child about what signs their body is telling them, what that feels like, I think that's really important to help them understand what their body is feeling.
And going back, and we're talking a little bit more about the signs of toilet training. You're talking about this 3-step process, and you're talking about the influences, like the very first step, for example, the child you're sort of influencing the child a little bit more to be aware that this is their next phase. Is there a way that Is there a certain steps that you're meant to go through in order to teach them to be ready? Sort of like following to the bathroom, for example, like you said a little earlier. Are there other steps that you can sort of do in order to promote it a little bit more to them?
I think it comes down to that exposure piece and that consistency piece, right? So I think consistency is so important with anything, whether it's, going to work out or wanting to lose weight or with potty training. If you're not consistent with something, then it's kind of hard to expect results. So I think parents and families just need to be more comfortable initiating that conversation with their kids. And just doing it in an age appropriate way or developmentally appropriately if the child does have a medical or developmental diagnosis, meaning the child where their needs are, and educating them based on that child's level.
Mm-hmm. And are there any sort of essential items or even equipment that can sort of help a parent teach the child to toilet train?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of equipment that we can go over. I think books, we've already talked about them. I do have some book examples, if that's okay for me to go over with you.
Yeah, go for it.
So if the families choose not to hire a potty training consultant, there are resources available for them. This first book, Dina, I don't know if this will be able to be showed to everybody, but Brandy Brooks, Potty Training in 3 Days. This is a good resource for families. All of the books most of the items I'm going to go over can be available on my website through affiliate links too. Okay. But this is a lot of general information for parents. Just basic kind of language that they can use, signs to look for, and kind of what process is recommended. So 3 Days Potty Training by Brandy Brooks is a good resource. Okay. There's also kids books available that we talked about. You can introduce during your child's bedtime or story time routine. This one, Dino Potty by Kids Books. It's really cute because it's a dinosaur going to the potty and it is rhyming. So yeah. One of the is when I think I'm finished, I shout for dad or mom. They get me toilet paper so I can wipe my bum. They make it, they make books so fun for kids now. Another book that I really like is called Diapers Are Not Forever by Verdict. Mm-hmm. The reason I like this author so much is because the illustrations are so simple. And the wording is very simple on the page. So if you have a child that gets really overstimulated, there's not too much going on with the illustration. So that's really good. As far as overstimulation goes, I do not recommend books that have flaps in them or books with buttons. An example, P is for Potty by Elmo. The reason why is because kids just get so distracted looking at what's behind the flap that they almost kind of forget about what the content is that the parent is trying to teach them. Same thing with books that have buttons on them. The child just gets focused, oh, this button makes a sound. That's really cool. And then I forget about the content that's in there. One last book that I want to show you is We Poop on the Potty by Little Grasshopper Books. This is one of my favorite books. We are very big on normalizing poop in our house. I talk about poop with my son. I tell my son my body has to poop. I asked my son if you want to flush the toilet with me. Let's wave bye, bye pee, bye poop. And we normalize it a lot because that's a normal basic bodily function. And I think if it's not normalized, then kids are more likely to become embarrassed or ashamed if their body does that. So We Poop on the Potty is one of my favorite books. The only thing is, again, is if your child becomes visually overstimulated, there is a lot going on. But this book talks about different animals that poop in the sea. And then at the end of each page, it says, I poop on the potty. So books are good to start that conversation. Some other equipment that you can get is a small potty seat and put the potty seat in the bathroom. Or you can get an attachment for the bigger potty seat. And that way your child has an option. Do you want to sit on the big potty or the little potty? And then that way you're giving a child the choice. And it feels like they have a little bit of a sense of control in that. Some other equipment that you can have is you can talk with your family or your spouse about if you want to use a reward system. There's definitely pros and cons to using a reward system for sure. So sometimes with rewards, the child might be more motivated to complete the task because that reward is being provided. It may make the process more fun and interactive for the child. Oh, I get a prize because I went poop on the potty, right?
Yeah.
Rewards can also reinforce a positive behavior, and progress might happen faster too because a reward is being provided. On the flip side, to take into consideration, there are some cons with using the reward system. Some cons include that a reward might be expected throughout other daily routines. I got a reward for going to the bathroom. Why didn't I get a reward for doing X, Y, or Z, right? Another kind of the reward system is the child might feel a sense of anxiety, or they might feel stressed out, or the sense of being a failure because they weren't able to complete the expected task. And so they didn't get a reward for it. So just some things to keep in mind if you do decide to use a reward system. I do encourage families to avoid using food products as a reward system because it can potentially create an unhealthy relationship with food. So example is if you're giving your child sweets or candy, that might not be a healthy relationship, or you're giving the child food when they might not necessarily be hungry. So just keep that in mind if you do decide to use a reward system. Another piece of equipment or something to have handy could be underwear. Getting your child engaged in picking out what underwear they want can make them excited about the process. So the parents can choose 2 or 3 options and then let the child pick from those options. I'm a huge advocate for choice making in child development because the parent is in control of which choices to provide the child, but then the child is in control of which one they want from those options. So that gets them excited about that. And then one last thing that I can think of as far as having some stuff ready is be prepared for constipation. Constipation is very common to be expected for potty training because the child is going to be expected to pass a bowel movement in a different way that they haven't been familiar with before. So you can have prune juice handy or pears handy and try those first. I do have to advise that if you have any concerns with your child's overall medical development, always contact your child's pediatrician, especially if constipation is going on for an extended period of time. It's always better to contact them to see if there's something else medically going on.
What are the ages do you see, like the long term of how long it takes for a child to be fully toilet trained and able to use the normal toilet that we have in the bathroom?
So going back to the consistency piece and the readiness signs, I think those aspects are going to impact how long it takes a child to become fully potty trained. So if you start early, then that's going to delay the process of how long the child's going to be potty trained. If the child is cared for by multiple caregivers, well, grandma's doing it this way, but the parents are doing it this way, that can be confusing for the child. And so I think that definitely is going to impact the length of the time for the process too. And then also consistency. If you start, okay, I don't want to do diapers or pull-ups anymore, but then a couple days later, you put them back in a diaper or pull-up. Well, I've just been out of them for a couple of days. We're kind of regressing. So all of those things are going to impact how long the potty training process is going to take. I will say, though, that nighttime toilet training is not to be expected until closer to the age of 4 to 5, only because the child's bladder isn't fully developed by then. So the goal is that once the child is full daytime toilet trained, that nighttime toilet training would become more natural. So just keep that in mind, that it's okay to have your child still in a pull-up at nighttime only. It's the only time I recommend pull-ups for families is because it might not be anatomy or bodily appropriate for them just because their bladder hasn't increased in size yet.
Okay. So when going through the process of sort of toilet training, a parent shouldn't be worried about the fact that 3 or 4 and they're still sort of going through that process with them.
Oh, absolutely not. I think families put too much pressure on themselves. I think society puts too much pressure on themselves. I think it's totally a very realistic expectation that, yeah, even though I'm potty training my child, there are still going to be accidents, just like any milestone a child is going to be completing, right? So when a child first starts learning to walk, they're still going to fall down. With potty training, they're still going to have accidents. Some of my friends and clients that have older kids have actually told me that their pediatrician is recommending to wait closer to the age of 3 to even start toilet training, just because regression is so common under the age of 3, and even that 2.5 age point. So I'm totally fine with knowing that those are some of the expectations that are going to happen, and just being okay with it.
Okay. Well, that's very good to know. So what are the most prevalent obstacles that parents face when it comes to toilet training?
I think, I briefly mentioned if the child has a different caregiver. I had a client about a year or so ago where they committed fully to potty training, and I was there to support them, and the family was so excited and it worked. And then the child went back to the caregiver, the daytime caregiver, which was a grandparent, and the child had a complete regression. And it was very hard for the family to understand that if the caregiver isn't willing to follow through with your strategies, then it's not going to work. And the parent just kept coming to me, well, what else can we do? What else can we do? Well, if you can't have that communication with that caregiver, there's really nothing else that we can do, because you saw it work firsthand, the strategies. So I think if your child is cared for by somebody else during the day, whether that be a grandparent or a babysitter or a nanny or even a daycare, having open communication with that other person and establishing what your boundaries are and what your expectations are for your child's potty training routine, and making sure that they're open to carrying through those strategies. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Some other obstacles to keep in mind is if your child is sensitive to light or sounds. Some of the public bathrooms are very overstimulating with those lights, and some of the automatic toilets that we have here in the States can be really loud. So, your child might be sensitive to that. So just keep that in mind, that they might be scared. I think constipation is another common obstacle that parents struggle with. How to overcome that is kind of what we already talked about, just consulting with your pediatrician if you have additional concerns, trying some natural food items like the pears or the prune juice to see if those help support your child. And then another aspect that might be an obstacle is just the power struggle between the parent-child relationship, right? So I think if parents go into the potty training process knowing, hey, I'm the one changing this expectation, it's me. I'm the one that is changing this child's routine. Be mindful of that. Since the day you brought your child home from the hospital, they were in diapers, and now, okay, diapers are all gone. There's going to be some pushback. There's going to be some resistance, but you are the one changing that expectation for your child. So just be mindful and try to have patience that, it is going to be frustrating at times, but just try and be there to support your child as best as you can with this new routine.
Mm-hmm. And I think I've spoken to a couple of my friends who do have children, and they had a son, for example, and for them, we were having this conversation about who was toilet, because I was talking to her about this episode and particularly told her that this is coming up. And she was mentioning about how her son was being toilet trained by her father because of the sort of the different gender and sort of teaching them how to use it specifically for men. And then she was like, there's no way that I could have some influence as to teaching. So how would you go about it if they were of a different gender, for example?
Well, for toilet training boys, for that gender, I recommend starting from sitting on the toilet, because the goal is, okay, let's just at least get him toilet trained. And I think starting from sitting down is going to be easier. And that's more important than, okay, he has to stand up because that's what boys in that gender do. I think it is okay if the family's comfortable with the same gendered caregiver inviting that child into the bathroom. Hey, do you want to see, grandpa has to go potty. Do you want to come with me? If the parent feels okay with that relationship, because they do have the same anatomy, the child can see the difference with that. But starting from sitting down, I think is 100% okay to still support your child. I think there's still ways to do that, even though there's different genders.
Okay, I can definitely let her know that then. I think that's a really good point, because that was something that she is worried about. So she made sure that I would ask that.
Yeah, no problem.
So
and she
what is
contact a potty training consultant directly too. Since I do virtual sessions, it doesn't have to be just in the States.
Well, there you go. I will definitely send over her the link to your website in order to get into contact with you then. So now we're going into the practice and habit part of the show. What is a practice that you do to improve your parenting when it comes to the process of toilet training your child?
So are you referring to what method I recommend as far as toilet training goes?
I think this gets a little bit more into what your practice is. So for example, I know with your child, it's not quite there yet, but what are some of the things that you are currently doing to sort of promote the toilet training?
So because I haven't potty trained my own son yet, I consider my parenting style to be more of like research based and gentle parent based. So I try and incorporate those strategies as part of my parenting style, and just make it kind of a more fun process for him, a little bit less stressful, and more of kind of like this is part of our daily routines.
So what are three good things that you've sort of figured out about this practice and sort of going through that daily routine with them?
One aspect that I like about my parenting style is that I feel like I'm very patient with him. I also feel like I'm very open minded, and I feel like I try and relate to him as best as I can with what he might be going through or what he might be feeling in different specific moments.
Okay. And in contrast, what are some challenges that you've sort of found sort of going through the gentle parenting style?
Well, so with gentle parenting, you have to be really in check with your own regulation. I mean,
Yeah.
gentle parenting takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of your own self-awareness as a parent. And sometimes at the end of the day, I'm just like, I need a mental break, but I think I do the best that I can. And do I sometimes yell? Yes, absolutely I do. I'm not a perfect parent by any means, but I try to break the cycle in the sense that I was never apologized to as a child when my parents yelled at me. And so I feel like I'm very aware of that. If I yell at my son, he deserves an apology. That's not fair for him because I couldn't regulate my own emotions in that moment. Right. So, I think it takes a lot of effort, but you have to be willing to try and willing to change. What did I do today that really worked, and what did I do that I want to make different tomorrow? Just have that perspective and have that time to reflect on what went well for you that day, what didn't go well for you that day. That's actually a question my husband and I ask each other at the end of every day. What went well for you today? What didn't go well for you? And we even ask our 2-year-old son, and he gets his time to speak. And I think that just, I think a lot of times people focus on a lot of negatives that happen. And so I try and focus on some of the positives, but also showing, yeah, it's okay that this didn't go well for you either. I want that to be normal too, but also supportive.
Okay, well, that's actually a really nice way of sort of introducing sort of a gentle way of dealing with situations as well to regulate your son's emotions. So I definitely applaud. I know I've spoken to a lot of people about gentle parenting on this show so far, and a lot of people have said the exact same thing, where it's about regulating your own self, and it is not the easiest thing in the world to do. I mean, you can barely do it with or without a child involved, and trying to regulate with the child is twice as stressful. So I definitely commend you for that.
I do have to say, I actually feel like it's easier to regulate my own emotions with my own child than an adult sometimes. Sometimes I just want to yell at an adult, and
Yeah.
you
At
know,
least it's a good influence not to.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I definitely feel like I'm more in check with my emotions and self-regulation with my son.
Well, that's great. So this talks a little bit about, would you recommend this practice to everyone that you are talking to and to the audience as well?
I think the best practice I would recommend is just being open to researching different parenting styles and go based off what works best for you and your family. I've always been a very research based person. I like to learn information, and not everybody likes that, but I think just being open to it, I think is helpful. But there's definitely different pieces of different parenting styles that I feel like I take. Oh, I like the way that so and so did this. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to be mindful of that, and I turn it into my own parenting style between me and my husband and our family.
Wow, it's like a custom, I like this and I'll take this. Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
custom built car at the same time, like in regards to that.
Yeah, but you also have to be open to learning about different information out there. And everyone is going to have advice. I mean, sometimes people will give you advice even when you didn't ask for it. So you just have to take that.
Yes, and I think that's a great way of going through it as well. So now we've got going through the section of questions from audience. There are quite a lot of questions, which is why I wanted a little bit more time to focus on them. I think over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of questions that sort of built up. So we're very excited to actually get to go through them.
I will do my best to answer them as best as I can.
Okay, perfect. The first one is how to explain the feeling or the urge to pee to children.
Oh, that's a good question. I think just talking to them about what your body is feeling. Oh, my body says I have to pee. Listen, do you hear mommy's pee? It's coming out. Talking to them about, oh, sometimes I have to take a deep, deep breath, relax my body, and I will model for my son. Taking a deep breath. Oh, okay, my pee is coming out now. I think modeling them for language about what your body is feeling helps support language that they can use to communicate how their body is feeling. You can also demonstrate for them the sign language for potty training. The sign for potty language is, or I have to go potty, is you stick your thumb in between your index and middle finger and you wave your hand back and forth, and you can find YouTube videos on that too, but just giving them an alternative means of communication. Kids at this age are also visual. You can have a picture of a potty or a toilet for them and have them point to it or go get the picture if their body is feeling like that urge to go, but they don't have the vocabulary to communicate that yet.
Mm-hmm. So going back to what you were saying a little earlier about sort of connecting the verbal language to the bodily function, is that something that children react to a little bit more efficiently?
Well, I think that children can't learn language unless they're exposed to it, right? So giving them certain phrases and modeling for them, they will repeat it back to you. Kids under the age of 3, their brains are like sponges. They're like, I just want to take in all of this information that I can. And then how do I, transfer that throughout my daily routine? So I think the language that you use in your family, they will pick up on that 100%. Kids are very observant and they want to learn and they want to be a part of what their parents are doing.
Perfect. Okay, so the next one is, how can I encourage my child to use the potty instead of relying on the diaper?
So I don't think we've talked about this, but the method that I recommend is called the bare bottom method. And what that method really looks like is you've reviewed the signs of child's readiness. You feel like your child's ready for, full-time potty training. And what you do is you wake up one day, okay, no more diapers. And you pump your child with liquids and fluids, and they are not in a diaper, not in underwear, not in pull-ups for at least 3 days. So that's the method that I recommend, because the purpose of toilet training is you're giving them a new place to release their urine or bowel movement is on the toilet or potty. Pull-ups have a very similar texture to diapers. So really there's not really a change there texture-wise. The feeling will still feel the same. So during those 3 days, I recommend no family outings, no trip to the store, no TV time. You will be a helicopter parent for at least three days and watching signs that your child might have to use the bathroom. Depending on how many liquids you're giving your child, they might have to go urinate before 2 hours or right around the 2-hour mark, depending on how much they're intaking. So signs to look for that they actually have to use the potty is, are they doing like the potty dance? Are they crossing their legs? Are they hiding? Are they touching their private area? Those are some signs to look out for that the child has to use the potty. So then what you would do is guide the child. Oh, I'm seeing your body might have to use the potty. Let's go try. Try and avoid asking the question, do you have to go potty or can we try to go potty? Because that gives the child the option to say no. So instead, make it matter of fact. I see your body has to use the bathroom. Or potty. We're going to go to the bathroom now. Something like that. Take them to the toilet and, encourage them to release that way. This method removes the diapers, like that one, going back to the beginning of the question. And once you commit to no diaper, or once you commit to the potty training process, I do not recommend going back to diapers at all. Pull-ups only at nighttime.
Okay.
Did that answer the question?
Yes, no, that definitely did. It fits in really nicely to the next question. How do I handle or react to accidents and setbacks during toilet training?
So try and normalize accidents as much as possible. We want to try and avoid having the child feel ashamed or embarrassed. You can use a phrase such as, I'm giving these phrases as examples, but feel free to change the language with what works best for your family. So an example might be, we didn't make it to the potty on time. We can try next time. You can come get mommy or daddy or caregiver, and we can go to the potty with you. Do you want to see mommy go to the potty next time too? Things like that, make it normalized. It'll help feel the child less ashamed and embarrassed. Oh, well, we got to clean it up. Okay, we can try again.
Okay. So when dealing with the reaction to the situation, how important is it to not sort of react quickly to the accidents?
I think it's that's going back to how do we regulate our emotions, because I think our first instinct, and I'm guilty of it too. A couple weeks ago, my son, we took him out of the bathtub and he was naked and he ran right into into his bedroom and he urinated all over his chair, his rocking chair. So my first reaction was, oh my gosh. And I saw he got startled from my reaction. So I tried to fix it quickly. Oh, that's okay, buddy. It happens. We'll clean it. We'll fix it. Let's put you in a diaper. So I think just being in check with your emotions, knowing that accidents are going to happen, and just try and be mindful about that as best as you can. I think being kind of that helicopter parent is going to maybe make it easier on you, because you'll be really focusing for signs your child's body is showing that they have to use the bathroom, and try and get them into that bathroom as quickly as possible.
So I think you mentioned earlier about not going to family function or any functions or going out. When should be the stage that they're sort of ready to be able to go outside without a diaper?
Well, ideally, if you are committing to potty training for that at least 3 days at home, then you can start putting the child in underwear, and then maybe you can start by taking them to small places, that aren't too far from home. Again, if the child gets overstimulated easily, you just want to be mindful of, okay, we're going to be coming up to that 2-hour mark where my child hasn't urinated or passed a bowel movement. I don't know if my child will be comfortable going to the bathroom in a public setting. Let's try and get home within this 2-hour time frame. The 2-hour mark is a good indicator for parents, because that's about how long they should be able to hold their urine for. Again, depending on how much liquids they're intaking at the time, but just trying to make it as comfortable for your child as possible.
Okay.
After those 3 to 5 days, however long you commit to being at home, I'm okay with you putting the child in the underwear, and just doing pull-ups at night. Again, pull-ups are very similar texture to diapers, and it doesn't really make sense. Okay, well, you've been without a diaper and pull-up for 3 to 5 days. Let's put you back in one after this new time frame. That's kind of a little bit of regression, in my opinion.
Okay. So is there something in between pull-ups and underwear that can be used, or is it either just straight from pull-ups onto the underwear phase?
Well, I would skip pull-ups period unless it's for nighttime use only.
Okay.
Only so my plan when I potty train my child is just to go from diapers to the underwear and pull-ups at night because it's not appropriate for him to be nighttime potty trained yet. So he is still going to have accidents at night. So that's my plan. But there's really, from what I've seen, there's really no in between for that. I think pull-ups can sometimes be more of like a marketing because they do have the concept of the underwear where the child has to pull up and pull down, but it's that texture that's, so similar to diapers where the child won't feel a difference.
Mm-hmm. And this next question is actually really interesting. How can parents differentiate between a child who's not ready for toilet training versus a child who's experiencing difficulties during toilet training?
I think if you're concerned your child's having difficulties, you can always talk to your pediatrician and say, this is what we've tried. The pediatrician might look at those signs from the medical standpoint. And I think that might be a good indicator for parents. Okay, we're ruling out there's something medical. Maybe let's try and change our approach. I think the families have to be willing to change. Okay, well, this is what we're doing and it's not working, but we're still expecting results. So what can we do or try differently?
Okay. So there really is no kind of sign between differentiating someone who's not ready for toilet training at all. Like, how can you tell that they're just not ready?
I think going back, just educating yourself on the signs and just knowing your child. If they're really resisting and fighting you on it, then maybe they just aren't ready. And it would be better emotionally for all of you guys to take a step back and then try again in a couple of months. Or if you do feel like they are ready, then you do need to be consistent with it and say, this is what we're doing. So it goes back to knowing what you have to really take a look at your child and know your child and know the signs to look for what your child can handle.
Okay. Now, are there any medical or sort of developmental issues that can make toilet training a little bit more challenging than usual?
Yeah, if the child has a developmental or diagnosis like Down syndrome or autism, we can't expect necessarily those children to be showing signs of readiness or start toilet training at the average age of 27 months, right? So I think the medical and developmental diagnosis is definitely going to impact when a child is going to be ready for toilet training.
Okay. Now, what are the pros and cons of toilet training children by having them either sit or stand?
Yeah, I think a con as far as trying to have them stand right off the bat is, for one, does your child have the attention span to just stand there? And also it might go everywhere too. Whereas while they're sitting, it can be a little bit more contained. So I wouldn't put pressure on trying to have them stand right away. I think just focusing on teaching them what the new expectation is, teaching them signs about their body, I think that's definitely more important than how they're doing it standing. Yeah.
Okay. Can a child who has been toilet trained be untrained again?
Definitely. I think regression is very, very common. Some things that might trigger it is, again, that consistency. Are there different caregivers doing toilet training a different way? I think if a family has a change in their routine, such as did they move recently? The child will be in a new environment. Are they at a new daycare? Did your family just welcome a new baby?
Mm-hmm.
Did your child transition from a crib to a toddler bed? Did you guys just travel or go on vacation? Those are all changes in a child's routine that can impact, a regression. And I also recommend avoiding starting the toilet training process around any of those changes because your child will most likely regress. So hold off on toilet training until you guys are back in your normal routine. But know if your child has already been potty training, that those are instances where regression might occur.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the routine, how influential is the whole idea of like a normal systematic routine to toilet training?
I think children in general respond to routine and they respond to structure. I think kids like the idea of knowing what's going to happen and what's going to come next. I think children thrive on that predictability. And I like to have my routine too. Routines look different for everybody, but
Okay.
just that, whatever changes that are going to occur, that's going to impact how your child responds to a new expectation.
Okay. And the last question is, what can be done to speed up the process with sort of a late starter in the whole toilet training process?
I don't like the phrase speed up because I think that's more parent centered instead of child centered. And I just like to meet the child where they are at developmentally. So I think if the parent is okay changing their perspective a little bit and saying, hey, what is the main reason that I'm doing this for? Is this because I'm doing this because I just don't want my child in diapers or pull ups anymore? Or is my child really ready and I'm supporting my child based on where they're at? I think consistency is going to always impact, like I said a couple times already, that's going to impact the success and outcome of the potty training process.
Okay, that's perfect. And it leads us into the last section of the show, which is the open mic. It gives you a chance to talk about anything that you are passionate about. And anything that you're currently working on. So during the last few minutes, do you mind just sort of sharing anything that I'd love to give you the floor and that you can share anything that you are passionate about or you love to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think, my passion is definitely coming out of the infertility aspect now that I'm a mom. I think infertility is never going to go away from me. I still have a lot of friends that are struggling and going through it. And I don't know that we will be able to expand our family anymore because of my infertility history. So infertility will always be a passion of mine, just trying to be able to support others, other couples, other women going through that, just knowing that they can come to me as a resource. I'm definitely very passionate about educating others about what infertility looks like. I'm also very passionate about child development. I think that's one of the areas that is a strength of mine. And currently, I'm actually really excited to announce that by the end of the month, I'm going to be starting to offer newborn sleep consulting services officially on my website. So even though I earned those certifications about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, it's been a lot of work just trying to start up a business and start, offering potty training consulting services. But I'm finally at the point of I can start offering another service on my website as part of my consulting company. So I'm so excited to be getting ready to do that. And I'm looking forward to how else I can continue to grow my company and just develop myself as a person and just continue to expand my career and help others.
Well, congratulations on that. I can't wait to see that progress even further. I think it's incredible, and I think especially the way that we are parenting today, it definitely does need a lot of support. And I'm glad that now there is a lot more availability to support upcoming parents or expecting parents throughout their process. And that's honestly why I love hosting this show, because there are so many different ways that so many different kinds of support that parents need that each guest comes on and they're definitely willing to fulfill that sort of guide that a little bit further. So I can't wait to see that grow even further, and congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, what was hard about me becoming a new parent is because I do have this background in child development, but that infertility aspect, I couldn't mentally and emotionally allow myself to do research. And I pride
Yeah.
myself on being a very research-based parent, but I couldn't accept that this was finally happening for me. So, yeah, my son's sleep was very, very challenging. I didn't know anything about newborn wake windows. I didn't, know anything about his feeding. My son he was losing a lot of weight when he was first born, and come to find out he had a tongue and lip tie, and that was impacting his nursing. So the first 3 months of his life were very, very tough. And a lot of it had to do because I couldn't come to terms to research anything, and finally got to the point where something needs to change. And that's when I found the Institute of Pediatric Sleep and Parenting. And I'm like, well, this is great. Now I can help, I can help others. And, I don't ever want a family to go through what I went through those first 3 months of my son's life. It was one of the toughest things I had ever done.
Well, it's great that you get to now share your knowledge and also personal experience with it in sort of guiding that even further. And it's amazing that you're able to do that now.
Thank you.
I also do want to thank you so much for joining me onto the show and sort of talking about toilet training and also the different ways that children need assistance from parents. I think it's amazing how you don't realize how much help a child does need throughout their developmental process and just as they go through life, and especially in those early first few years. We've talked a lot about middle school and when they start schooling, but we haven't really gotten in depth into before that. So I'm really glad that we got to sort of have an introductory into that today. So thank you so much for sort of guiding us through that.
Absolutely. And feel free to invite me back if you want to talk about child development. I'd be more than happy to come back. And I really appreciate this opportunity. And it's been so nice talking with you. And I hope I was able to answer a lot of the questions for the audience and for you.
Yes, no, I'm definitely sure you did. If there's a way that audiences would like to further get into contact with you, is there a way that they are able to?
Yeah, they can reach out to me on my website, bebabyconsulting.com. I have information about the services that I provide on there. And I have also resources that we talked about today as far as books goes for parent support and also for child development about the toilet training process, product recommendations. And then I also have a contact form on that website that they can reach out to me directly. And then also, Dina, if there's a way that you can share my website with them, also feel free to post the link as well.
Oh, yes, I definitely will post the link in the description below on our YouTube channel, and it will definitely be there for all the audience members to see and just be at the touch of a button. So that's amazing. It's also a lot really helpful to have the resources on your website as well. So everything is pretty much there. You've pretty much done the work for us, I would say.
Yeah. The listeners go to the website. I also have links on my website that can direct you to my LinkedIn page, my Facebook page, things like that. So there's other means to contact me too.
Okay, perfect. I'll definitely have that available for the audience members down below. Thank you so much for listening, guys. And it was amazing to get to talk about this today. We've got so many other different shows that's coming up, and I'm so excited to share it with you. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. You've been listening to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by the Parenting Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website at pa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargeant, and thanks for tuning in.